Well, hello and welcome to our Hope Nomination Process Custom Solution Documentation video. I'm hoping that by sharing with you some of the description of our current system, I can communicate to you requirements that are going to be needed as we move this system to our new platform. Starting with an objective, we want to deliver a solution that improves on the 95% paperless annual deacon information process or deacon nomination process at Hope Church. It's been a process in place, or this process has been in place since 2015. It replaced a very manual, cumbersome process. It's almost fully automated, fully paperless, and haven't had to make many changes to it over the years. So it's something that's pretty popular, and we're really hoping to get it moved into the new system. What we'll be looking at in this video is database requirements, contact information requirements, other system config stuff that we will need, group requirements, the candidate selection and grouping. So how are we going to select candidates to put them in the group that we want to use for nomination? Nomination system reset. So every year we reset the system and get it ready for the nomination process. There's two modes to our process. We have a voting mode. This is where all the nominating committee members vote, discuss, and do that stuff with the system. And then we move into a personal information mode. This is where the voting's completed. Now we need to collect information and manage the candidate process. And then we move from there to the candidates actually completing forms, filling out information. They can sign in and fill it out as they're comfortable. They don't have to sit in one session and tell us all this information. And then the interview prep, which is the only part where paper is required for the process. It's just a report at the end that we can put in the hands of an interviewer to help facilitate the interview process. Okay, well, starting with the database requirements, we have a voting table. That's the only real custom database element we currently have. However, we look to do this in the next iteration of this system. Basically, it has a keyed ID. Anytime someone casts a vote, it creates a new ID for that vote. Then there's a voter ID, which translates in Ministry Platform to a contact ID of the voter, and then a contact ID, as you see in the next field, for the nominating or nominee ID. These can be renamed as it makes more sense in Ministry Platform. The date the vote came in, which is date created, date modified, and modified by. The modified by is the username of the person who voted, but we really haven't, once a vote's in there, we're not really modifying it. So that was just added so we could, kind of stick with a process of, it's kind of a common process to add those attributes to the table, or those fields to the table. Then we see group ID, which is basically the group ID that had the nominee in it. So it kind of is more for historical reporting purposes. And then the group name. That's just the group name that contained the nominee we're voting for. We're really not utilizing some of these fields, but including group ID and group name. But that's just to give you a description of what we currently have. All right, contact information requirements. Well, the first thing I want to just point out is that some of the data items that we're going to talk about here have a private side to public side. So just like a lot of survey type questions have like a private field that make it easier for the people to do reporting and see things behind the scenes. And then they have a public side that makes it nicer for the person filling out the form to read the question and so on and so forth. So it's no different here, and I have those indicated below. I'll point them out as we go through. Starting with the first one, nominating or nominee character confirmation. That's a bit field that it's like a little checkbox that says, hey, I can do this. I don't have anything in my life that would keep me from doing this position or fulfilling this position. And then second, we have a sent date when the personal information form is sent, and when the personal information form is modified, when it's completed, if someone has declined the date and time they might have declined it, any ministry involvement in the past 12 months. That has a front end to that question, as you see there with the little asterisk. Volunteer service for the past 12 months, another back end, front end type question. Hope history, and again, a back end, front end type question. Faith journey, it's also on the personal information form. And then what stirs the most passion, and then any questions and concerns. So those with asterisks on it are all on the personal information form with a longer, more elaborate question. And then might have a reason for declining. That's a little drop down that just has some easy selections, and then nomination notes. So we basically require a little extra notice depending on why someone might decline. But in other words, the note can be for someone declining, or it can be for just anything. Okay, other config requirements. So we'll need an email template for the PIF form link, email template for PIF alerts to staff. Sometimes when one comes in, it helps for the staff to see it right away, so they can click on it and then see all the answers that someone put in. PIF alerts, the actual alerts themselves, not just the template. Probably will be some way that's needed to manage that, so we know who gets alerts and things like that. And then we have group requirements. As a staff user, I should be able to select the groups I need to associate with the voting process so that I can see the candidate's current and past deacon and elder position status. So we also need that to be able to see who we're actually voting for that year, which I'll talk about at the very end of this list. So the first grouping of groups are current deacon group, current deacons group, inactive deacons group, current elders group, and inactive elders group. The major thing there is that this basically shows who's active, who's inactive. These could possibly be combined. They were separated due to constraints we had in the past with information, but they could possibly be combined in the future and managed through like or status of someone in a group. So they could actually even be managed in one group, possibly with different roles for officers in the church. So there's a bunch of options there that could simplify that. The last one, though, is the nominee group. So that's kind of a very obvious group. That's the group that we would place people into for the particular nominating session that we'd be having, or whatever the nominating campaign we'd be having. Basically, all the information for voting would point to anybody. Anybody in that group would be or have the potential to be voted on. Candidate selection and grouping. So for this, we are hoping to use the data selection and mass group assignment tools already in Ministry Platform to select candidates. That's a huge powerful set of tools that are already in that system. So we're hoping that we don't have to do any customization for that. Basically, we want to be able to put different criteria in, and then create a selection, and then add that selection to a group. So I'm hoping that's pretty straightforward. All right, so now that we see those basic background information items, let's go ahead and take a look at the system itself. So looking at the system here, the first thing we look at is part of the config and reset portion of our presentation. And this part is just basically a group. So this is a grouping of people in Arena. It would be a grouping of people in Ministry Platform. I've obviously hidden the names and contact information of these folks, but it could be anywhere from 600 to 1,000 nominees in this particular group. It's pretty much that simple, and we just use, just like we're hoping to do in Ministry Platform, we just use the existing tools and information to add people to a group each year that is going to be connected to the nomination process. All right, well, the next step in our reset config process is to reset the candidate information. Now, we would normally have a script or a process routine that would run to reset information for all the candidates in a particular group. However, for this demonstration, I'm only going to do my own record, or this test record here. And as you can see, this is the behind the scenes information of that required contact information screen that we saw earlier. We see that nomination character confirmation, when the PIF was sent, date modified, all those kind of things were all put in through that process. I'm going to go ahead and click to edit this information. And the items I'm going to be removing here are items that would normally be removed by our automatic routine. So I'll go ahead and unclick this. I'm going to reset this item. All of these items. Now, we do not reset the ministry involved, even if it's only 12 months or whatnot. We leave all that for people to add and update it. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the only other ones we do is we will get rid of the, oh, no, that's part of the questions that they have. So I will get rid of this one here. The maybe next year reason for declining, because hopefully they're not going to decline this year. And the nomination note. Those are really only, those notes only really pertain to this year as part of the process. So we go ahead and get rid of all of that. And then I save it. And that takes care of preparing the contact information for this year's or the particular year's nomination process. For the next config item, I wanted to show you the labels that are front-facing that nominees or people are filling out the personal information form see. So these associate with the labels behind the scenes that we just saw, that, you know, what's your faith journey, what's your mission and passion, those type of things. These are the front-facing labels for those. So there are, in our situation, I put default ones in there, but they can be changed, edited if we have to change around questions. All that kind of stuff would happen here. And it gets entered. So it's really pretty straightforward. This is also where any email alerts and things like that would be associated or connected. So this would not necessarily be the same way we would do it in any other platform, but I'm just showing you the basic screen that we would see to edit the questions that people see that tie back to the fields that you see behind the scenes. And the last config reset item I want to show you is the config settings on the nominating screen itself. These are items that we change year to year. So for instance, this is going to be the nomination year that would get entered. These are where the vote mode or PIF mode gets changed over. This would be the group. In this case, they call it ministry tags, but really it's just a group of people. This is where that gets associated to whatever group has the nominees in it we're going to vote on. This is associated with the personal information form and a bunch of other things. So there's different, these are those attributes that we reset every year. Again, this is what ties different things to different things that are seen in this screen. But the point is that it's going to be different, but I wanted to show you just how things are associated now for the year and which group are the biggest ones, and possibly, I think that's, and where the mode is changed from vote mode to personal information form mode. Okay, so now everything's been reset. Everybody's been added to the appropriate group. The table or the questions have all been checked to make sure that we have the right questions setting, or that people are going to be answering this year. The year has been added to the screen. Basically, everything's done to get ready. It takes less time to do it than it does for me to actually explain it, but that's the process. Now, this screen you see here, and again, I apologize, I'm hiding some of this information is real information, so I'm hiding it, but I'm trying to show at least the items that you need to see. So people have already started voting in this thing, and so as I log in, I may see someone right off the bat that I might want to vote for. So I can go ahead and click vote. And there, my votes show up there. And then automatically the count shows up here and I can see the rank. Let's say I want to show someone else. Let's say I want to look for someone. I don't want to vote for that particular person. Let's say I want to vote for me. I wouldn't really do that in real life, but I think you get the idea. So I'll go ahead and put my name in there, and now I see myself there. Now, I want to kind of walk through these different fields you see across the screen here. Some of them are redundant. For instance, if I was showing up as a deacon, why would I even be on this list? Well, information can be wrong in the database, and so this is just a double check. We'd hate to have a deacon get all the way through the process and we just miss the fact that they were a deacon somehow because the nominating committee didn't know something. It seems ridiculous, but just to make sure that all the information is here, just so there's no errors in the process. So if I was a previous deacon, that would show up here. Deacons can cycle on and off in the deacon process. In this case, I'm a staff member. That would show up there. What region I live in, my contact information in case I did want to call this person and ask questions about something, which will happen later in the process, but all that contact information is there anyway. Address, everything is all there. Let's say that's good. I'm going to go ahead and click vote. Oh, before I do that, actually, let's go ahead and vote. Okay, so let's just say I voted for this person and I had more questions about the person that I wanted to follow up with. I can go ahead and click on the person's name either here or here. I'll go ahead and click up here. And that brings up my profile that has all my information in it that the nominating committee member can see, past prayer requests, everything. This would be pretty easily done in the system. There's no real customization. It just takes them to the regular contact information of the database. So nothing fancy there. Let's say I'm done looking that up now, and then I go back to the screen. It opened it up as a separate tab, so I didn't have to remember to hit the back button or navigate somewhere else or lose my filter or anything like that. It doesn't have to be a separate tab. It can be a pop-up. It can be whatever it works in the system, but that's how it works now. I can also, if I wanted to do searching in here, let's say I want to clear this filter, I can search by any region. I can bring up everybody. Let's say I am a nominating committee member in a particular region. I'm looking for, we need more people in a particular region, or the deacons that are rolling off the deacon roster are more heavily in one region. I can actually look up everybody in one region and then even filter out further. If I wanted to, then these are going to be mostly later, but I could filter out by other items too. But the biggest ones that I use are candidate name and region to kind of start to filter down folks. So let's say I'm working on region 7 and I happen to be in region 7 and that the person come up and I voted for this particular person. In this case, that's my test record. So that's it. That's the filtering part. Typically, I would vote for several people. I wouldn't just vote for one person. And the key to know here is that as I vote for folks, I'm not going to, just for demonstration purposes, I'm only going to vote for mine. But the point is that as people vote in real time, all the nominating committee members can see the ranking. And it makes it a lot easier later for when we do the next step in the process to reach out to people and not reach out to people later who have no votes. So we don't necessarily only select the people that are just the top votes. It's not a majority rule vote type process. It's a process to help us narrow down and select the right candidates to be deacons at the church. Okay, let's say the voting process is done now and I want to switch it to PIF mode. So I'm going to go ahead and turn vote mode off. Save this. Done. And it'll refresh everything and do its thing. And now it switches over to PIF mode. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom out just to make sure everything gets on the screen. And I can zoom into stuff as needed. As you can see, now that we are in personal information mode or PIF mode, the voting buttons are gone. We can't just change votes arbitrarily after that process. Now we're going to work with what we have. I still have region 7 up here. I'm going to go ahead and clear the filter so I see everything. Now, in my case, I want to just work with my record here, just for the sake of demonstration. Typically, I would have more people I'd be working with who I voted. I'm not even worried about who I voted for anymore. It's more now they're working as a team to reach out to the people who have been nominated. And you can see that there's similar information here, except on the far right-hand side, there's some other information. So if I want to enter a note, I can go ahead and enter a note based on something I might have come up in this year's process or whatever. That's pretty straightforward. If I want to send the PIF to this particular person, I can go ahead and just click this button. And it's going to ask me, I'll cancel the note here. Let's do this again. If I want to send a PIF, I can go ahead and click the Send PIF button on the right side there. And then it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to send a PIF link to Mike Gold? And I say, yes, I do. So that's automatically going to send an email. This is part of that template I mentioned. It's automatically going to send an email to this particular candidate with a link with a little bit of explanation what's going on, clicking this link to do this and whatnot. Most of the time before someone sends a link, they're going to go ahead and make a phone call anyway. But let's just say I talked to the person and I said I wanted to do it via Deacon, and that worked that way. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the email. All right, so now when I click the Send PIF mode, I sent out an email to the nominee. This is what the nominee receives. They get this information here, and they get a link to click on the PIF form. So I'm going to go ahead. I had already talked to someone on the nominating committee. I know what's going on. I was expecting this email, and I click to access my personal information form. When I clicked to access the information form, it took me directly to my personal information form itself. It's part of my profile. I would have been, just to save time, I didn't go through that whole process of signing in, but I would have been prompted to sign into my profile. I would have signed in, and then it would have prompted me to do this information. So let's say I had done this in the past, so I can go in here and edit my information. It looks the same, but this was from the past year, so I'll say I also served at Go and Do. It was great. And something else I might want to put there. But let's say I really want to, we very much encourage people. This is a big commitment to become a deacon, so we encourage people to think through these answers prayerfully. So let's say I'm not really done with anything. I want to save and edit later. I can go down here, click it, and my information's been saved. And then I can sign out and come back in. So once I do that, I could go back to my profile, and I'll show you that. To come back into the profile, I can either come back to that email, click on that link, which is what a lot of people do, or I can go into my profile from the web, or my web profile, click on my details. Anybody who was sent a PIF form it's one of those fields that you saw on the profile up here. So if I was to refresh this, you would see that the PIF was sent on this date, and it looks like the person actually modified it on the same date because I had clicked the Save button, so those now appeared there. So anybody who was sent a PIF has this date in here, and then when they see that, or when they have a PIF sent date, that makes this button appear, Open Personal Information Form. So regular everyday people don't see this. Only nominees see that when they've been sent a personal information form. So I logged into my profile here. I see my information for myself and my family, and I see this button right at the very top that says Open Personal Information Form. And this is one way they can come back in here and edit the form. Now let's say I look at here and I said worship has been great, or something else, every week. Just some other types of things they might have done this past year. They're not necessarily going to talk about their hope history unless something's changed, and they're not necessarily going to say more. We don't make them start over again with their whole faith journey. They can build on that as they do this process. And, well, this person mostly likes to sleep. They're very passionate about that. And they don't know what they don't know. So those are the only questions. And then the last one is, so if I went to finish and submit now, it's gonna prompt me to make sure I say there's nothing morally or otherwise that would make me ineligible to serve at this time. So I click that button, and now instead of save later, I'm going to go ahead and click finish and submit. I'm done editing it. And it's going to ask me this because once I do this, once I submit my form, it's not going to let me come back and edit it. So we don't want people to manipulate the process if they feel like there's right or wrong answers. We want to make sure, like, we're just moving forward with the process. So this year, they won't be able to edit it until next year. Now, obviously, they can contact us and we'll help them if they made a mistake or whatever to reset it for them. But mostly it works fine to just finish and submit it, and it makes a nice, clean process. And now they can always come back and visit it, but you can see that they can't edit any of the fields that are in there. And then back on the profile over here, I can see that they clicked the character confirmation item that was at the end of the form. They submitted it, or they received it. It was modified, and they actually completed it on the same day. So a lot of times, most of the time, these don't all match, but you get the idea. Where that information is the most helpful is back on this form here, or the main nomination master list. This is where they can see, now let me go ahead and refresh this. This is where they can actually see where it was sent, what time, and all that kind of stuff. The whole thing, they can see everything right there. What makes it helpful there is I can actually filter by, where PIF sent. I can see which ones have been sent. I can see who's completed stuff. One of the other items that we have to possibly be able to track is if they decide that they don't want to serve this year, or they can't serve this year. That can happen even after everybody's filled out a complete personal information form. In further talking, they say, you know what, I just have too many things going on. I really can't do it this year. They can mark it as declined. So I can go ahead and go right here, and I can say the reason for the decline is I'm just maybe other C note, family illness. And then say continue. And now I have it marked as decline. And then when I go back to the person information, or go back behind the scenes to my profile, I can see that there is an other C note, family illness, but they were marked as declined. So that's basically it for that part of the process. Now going back to the arena, or the actual list itself, I was able to vote. I was able to send out information or contact folks, and then make notes as I contact them about what's going on. And then I'm able to send out a form if they want to do that process. And then if everything's done, they just can't do it this particular year, I can mark it as declined. And then it'll all be reset next year when we do the process. But that's basically it. It's that simple. All right, this brings us to the final part of the process. This is the one that uses paper, or the part of the process that uses paper. And it's a simple report that kicks out a PDF for each of the nominees that can be basically collated and divided out to interviewers, which basically has the hope history and faith journey, the different questions on it, with lots of space for notes and stuff like that. So that's a very simple process, and they can finish that. That information doesn't even usually get back into the system. It's not really necessary unless there's specific, very critical notes. But most of the process at this point now is just finishing things up and then finishing up the final candidates, all that. So that's the process is short as I can condense it. So hopefully you found this helpful. Again, this is Mike Gold, Hope Church. Thanks for watching.